Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. Today we will be finishing part 8 of 8 in our series on the Bible names, starting with E. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Eve. Eve and womankind after her is sentenced to a life of sorrow and travail in childbirth, and to be under the power of her husband. Adam and Eve had 2 sons, Cain and Abel. The first a tiller of the ground, the second a keeper of sheep. After the death of Abel, Eve gave birth to a third son, Seth, from whom Noah and thus the whole of modern humanity is descended. According to Genesis, Seth was born when Adam was 130 years old, a son in his likeness and like his image. Genesis 5 says that Eve had sons and daughters beyond just Cain, Abel, and Seth. Evi. Evi was one of 5 Midianite kings, killed during the time of Moses by an Israelite expedition led by Phinehas, son of Eleazar, according to Numbers chapter 31 and Joshua chapter 13. Evil Merodach. Amel Marduk, meaning man of Marduk, also known as Awil Marduk, or under the biblical rendition of his name, Evil Merodach, was the 3rd king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, ruling from 562 BC until his overthrow and murder in 560 BC. He was the successor of Nebuchadnezzar II from 602 to 562 BC. On account of the small number of surviving cuneiform sources, little is known of Amel Marduk's reign and actions as king. Amel Marduk, originally named Nabushumukin, was not Nebuchadnezzar's eldest son, nor the oldest living son at the time of his appointment as crown prince and heir. It is not clear why Amel Marduk was appointed by his father as successor, particularly since there appears to have been altercations between the two, possibly involving an attempt by Amel Marduk to take the throne while his father was still alive. After the conspiracy, Amel Marduk was imprisoned, possibly together with Jeconiah, the captured king of Judah. Nabushumakin changed his name to Amel Marduk upon his release, possibly in reverence of the god Marduk, to whom he had prayed. Amel Marduk is remembered mainly for releasing Jeconiah after 37 years of imprisonment. Amel Marduk is also known to have conducted some building work in Babylon, and possibly elsewhere, through the extent of his projects, though the extent of his projects is unclear. The Babylonians appear to have resented his rule. as Babylonian sources from after his reign describe him as incompetent. In 560 BC, he was overthrown and murdered by his brother-in-law Neriglissar, who thereafter ruled as king. Amel-Marduk, as we mentioned, was the successor of his father, Nebuchadnezzar II. It seems that the succession to Nebuchadnezzar was troublesome, and that the king's last years were prone to political instability. In one of the inscriptions, written very late in his reign, after Nebuchadnezzar had already ruled for 40 years, the king affirms that he had been chosen for kingship by the gods before he had even been born. Stressing divine legitimacy in such a fashion was usually only done by usurpers, or if there were political problems with his intended successor. Amel-Marduk was chosen as heir during his father's reign and is attested as crown prince in 566 BC. Amel-Marduk was not Nebuchadnezzar's oldest son. Another of Nebuchadnezzar's sons, Marduk-Nadnahi, is attested in Nebuchadnezzar's third year as king, 602 to 601 BC, as an adult in charge of his own lands. Given that Amel-Marduk is attested considerably later, it is probably that Marduk-Nadnahi was Nebuchadnezzar's eldest son and legitimate heir, making the selection of Amel-Marduk unclear, particularly since Marduk-Nadnahi is attested as living until as late as 563 BC. Additionally, evidence of altercations between Nebuchadnezzar and Amel-Marduk makes his selection as heir seem even more probable. In one text, Nebuchadnezzar and Amel-Marduk are both implicated in some kind of conspiracy, with one of the two accused of bad conduct against the temples and people. Concerning Nebuchadnezzar, they thought his life was not treasured by them, the people of Babylon. Amel-Marduk spoke not concerning the treasure of Babylon. He made mention the cities of the Greek gods. His heart over son and daughter, family and tribe are. All that is full in his thoughts were not about the well-being of Azagala and Babylon. With attentive ears he went to the holy gates, prayed to the Lord of Lords. He cried bitterly to Marduk. The gods wanted his prayer too. The inscription contains accusations, though it is unclear to whom they are directed, concerning the desecration of holy places and the exploitation of the populace. Failures in the two main responsibilities of the king of Babylon. The accused is afterwards stated to have cried and prayed to Marduk, Babylon's national deity. Another text from late in Nebuchadnezzar's reign contains a prayer by an imprisoned son of Nebuchadnezzar named Nebuchadnezzar, who states that he was imprisoned because of a conspiracy against him. According to Leviticus Rabbah, a 7th century AD Midrashic text, Amel-Marduk was imprisoned by his father alongside the captured Judean king Jeconiah, because some of the Babylonian officials had proclaimed him king while Nebuchadnezzar was away. The Assyriologist Irving Finkel argued in 99 that Nebuchadnezzar was the same person as Amel-Marduk, who changed his name to Man of Marduk. Once he was released, as reverence towards the god to whom he had prayed. Finkel's conclusions have been accepted as convincing by other scholars, and would also explain the previous text, perhaps relating to the same incidents. The Chronicles of Jeremiel, a Hebrew work on history possibly written in the 12th century AD, erroneously states that Amel Marduk was Nebuchadnezzar's eldest son, but that he was sidelined by his father in favor of his brother. Nebuchadnezzar the Younger, a fictional figure not attested in any other source, and was thus imprisoned together with Jeconiah until the death of Nebuchadnezzar the Younger, after which Amel Marduk was made king. Considering the available evidence, it is possible that Nebuchadnezzar saw Amel Marduk as an unworthy heir, and sought to replace him with another son. Why Amel Marduk nevertheless became king is not clear. Regardless, Amel Marduk's administrative duties probably began before he became king, during the last few weeks or months of his father's reign, when Nebuchadnezzar was ill and dying. The last known tablet dated to Nebuchadnezzar's reign from Uruk is dated to the same day, 7th of October, as the first known tablet of Amel Marduk from Sapar. Esbon. Esbon is the name of two people mentioned in the Bible. A son of Gad in Genesis chapter 46. In Numbers chapter 26, his name is given as Ozni, whose descendants constitute the Oznite clan. The other one is a son of Benjamin in 1 Chronicles chapter 7. Ezekiel. Ezekiel is the central protagonist of the book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible. In Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Ezekiel is acknowledged as a Hebrew prophet. In Judaism and Christianity, he is also viewed as the 6th century BCE author of the book of Ezekiel, revealing prophecies regarding the destruction of Jerusalem and the restoration to the land of Israel. The name Ezekiel means God is strong, or God strengthens. The author of the book of Ezekiel presents himself as Ezekiel, the son of Buzi, born into a priestly lineage. Apart from identifying himself, the author gives a date for the first divine encounter, which he presents in the 13th year. Ezekiel describes his calling to be a prophet by going into great detail about his encounter with God and 4 living creatures with 4 wheels that stayed beside the creatures. For the next 5 years, he incessantly prophesied and acted out the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple, which was met with some opposition. However, Ezekiel and his contemporaries, like Jeremiah, another prophet who was living in Jerusalem at the time, witnessed the fulfillment of their prophecies with the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. Ezra. Ezra, also called Ezra the scribe and Ezra the priest in the book of Ezra, was a Jewish scribe or sofer, a priest or Cohen. In Greco-Latin, Ezra is called Esdras. According to the Hebrew Bible, he was a descendant of Sraya, the last high priest to serve in the first temple, and a close relative of Joshua, the first high priest of the second temple. He returned from Babylonian exile and reintroduced the Torah in Jerusalem. According to 1st Esdras, a Greek translation of the book of Ezra, still in use in Eastern Orthodoxy, he was also a high priest. Rabbinic tradition holds that he was an ordinary member of the priesthood. Several traditions have developed over his place of burial. One tradition says that he is buried in Al-Uzair, near Iraq, while another tradition alleges that he is buried in Tadif, near Aleppo, in northern Syria. His name may be an abbreviation of Zariyahu, or Yah helps. In the Greek Septuagint, the name is rendered Esdras, from which the Latin name Esdras comes. The book of Ezra describes how he led a group of Judean exiles living in Babylon to their home city of Jerusalem, where he is said to have enforced observance of the Torah. He was described as exhorting the Israelite people to be sure to follow the Torah law, so as not to intermarry with people of particular different religions, a set of commandments described in the Pentateuch. Ezra, known as Ezra the Scribe in Chazalic literature, is a highly respected figure in Judaism. The canonical book of Ezra and book of Nehemiah are the oldest sources for the activity of Ezra, whereas many of the other books ascribed to Ezra are later literary works dependent on the canonical books of Ezra and Nehemiah. The book of Ezra, Nehemiah, was always written as one scroll. The late medieval Christian Bibles, the single book was divided in two as 1st and 2nd Ezra, and this division became Jewish practice in the first printed Hebrew Bibles. Modern Hebrew Bibles call the two books Ezra and Nehemiah, as do other modern Bible translations. A few parts of the book of Ezra were written in Aramaic, and the majority in Hebrew, Ezra himself being skilled in both languages. Ezra was living in Babylon when in the 7th year of Artaxerxes I, the king of Persia, sent him to Jerusalem to teach the laws of God to any who did not know them. Ezra led a large body of exiles back to Jerusalem, where he discovered that Jewish men had been marrying non-Jewish women. He tore his garments in despair and confessed the sins of Israel before God, then braved the opposition of some of his own countrymen to purify the community by enforcing the dissolution of the sinful marriages. Some years later, Artaxerxes sent Nehemiah to Jerusalem as governor with the task of rebuilding the city walls. Once this task was completed, Nehemiah had Ezra read the law of Moses, the Torah, to the assembled Israelites. And the people and priests entered into a covenant to keep the law and separate themselves from all other peoples. Ezri. Ezri is a derivation of the Hebrew verb ozer. Ozer translates into English as to help. Ezri is translated from the Hebrew as my help. Ezri is used both as a surname and a given name. The earliest of use of Ezri as a given name is found in the Old Testament at 1 Chronicles chapter 27, where Ezri is identified as the son of Shalab, though Shalab is a slight mispronunciation in the King James Bible, since the original Hebrew text in the Torah uses a kaf, not a chaf, character. A better rendering of the Chalab as Caleb with a K is found in other translations. Ezri's occupation is described as an overseer of the workers of King David's land. This is part 8 and the final message of the biblical names starting with E. Please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all.